Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cosmic Connection, your UFO connection for the Pacific Northwest. This is a live call-in talk show dealing with the UFO phenomenon, and the date is August 24th, 1997. One of the first people to claim to have been abducted by aliens, apart from the famous contactees of the 40s and 50s, was actually a couple. This is most unusual, as most abductions tend to be of one person. The couple were Barney and Betty Hill. During September 1961, they were driving back from a holiday in Canada through the White Mountains. They noticed a light that seemed to be following them. They assumed that it was an airplane or a helicopter. After driving for a while, they were forced to stop the car because the light had descended rapidly and was now much closer. Barney got out to get a better look with the aid of his binoculars and described the object as banana-like with pointed tips and windows. Barney started to walk slowly towards the craft, and it was only after several desperate calls from his wife that he returned to the car. He claimed to have seen aliens through the window. At this, they drove back home. However, they soon realized that more than an hour of time was lost and noticed that the car had strange blotches on it. Betty reported it to Pease Air Force Base, who confirmed that they had indeed tracked an unknown object around that time and location. Soon afterward, Betty Hill began having strange nightmares involving aliens. She consulted several doctors who suggested hypnosis. Both the Hills were hypnotized by Dr. Benjamin Simon, that's Benjamin Simon, who was amazed by what the couple were independently describing. They told of being taken on board the UFO and having medical tests performed on them. Betty also remembered being shown a star map of where the aliens came from. Under further hypnotic sessions, they were able to recreate the star map, which turned out to be very close to a known star system. The exact planet that Betty Hill was shown circled the star Zeta Reticuli. This case was later made into a TV movie called The UFO Incident. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere appreciation and wonderment of we're having Mrs. Betty Hill on. Mrs. Betty Hill, welcome, ma'am.
Hello there.
Hi, welcome to the Portland audience, Mrs. Hill. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Mrs. Hill, we'd like to start off the questioning with a little bit of your background, yours and Barney's. Barney passed away in what year?
Barney died of a stroke in February 1969.
All right.
Now, as far as my own background, I grew up in rural New Hampshire.
Yes, ma'am.
My family was active in politics and community affairs. I went to a private college preparatory high school, graduated from the University of New Hampshire, and I went to work for the state of New Hampshire as a social worker, working with children. And
Yes.
I'm a retired social worker.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have many, many interests besides UFOs.
Yes, ma'am, you sure do. I have heard your name come up. You do attend some of the larger lectures, and you have been a voice in ufology for the past several years. Am I
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, I did TV, radio, college lecture tours for about 30 years.
Okay. Now, the book by John G. Fuller, Interrupted Journey.
Yes.
This was the book that basically told the world the correct and the unusual story of your abduction.
Yes.
What Dr. Benjamin Dr.
Simon.
Benjamin Simon,
Yes.
what he noticed is that the two of you were recalling through hypnosis the same incidences. Is that correct?
Well, we were recalling, I was remembering what happened to me, and Barney was remembering what was happening to him. But then they were, the abduction itself, being taken on board the craft, seeing the same people, were it's the same for the both of us.
All right, now let's go back to September 1961. You and Mr. Hill would take drives on Sunday afternoons.
Right.
And you were taking a drive to Canada, and I guess you were coming on your way back. Let's start from there. Where some beeps are mentioned in the movie, The Interrupted Journey, and that starred Estelle Parsons and Mr.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Let's go back to that and follow up on the beeps.
All right. Well, after when the craft came in front of our car and stopped, and Barney got out with the binoculars.
Yes, ma'am.
To try to identify this craft, and it began to descend, and he had the feeling they were trying to grab him. So he ran back to the car, yelling, we had to get out of there, they were trying to capture us. And we went speeding down the highway, and as we did, the craft moved, and it was over the roof of the car. And we heard these beep, 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 beep sounds that were coming from the general area of the trunk.
Okay.
And then we remembered driving along, and for several miles, probably 20 miles or so after the beeps, when Barney turned onto a side road. And then from the side road, he turned onto a dirt road, and here's a group of men standing on a curve, blocking our way. So Barney braked the car,
Yes.
and the motor died, and they came up, and we consciously remembered being on the dirt road. Excuse me. We remembered somewhere there was a group of men, but we could not get beyond that point.
Okay, this is what you consciously remember.
Consciously remember.
Yes.
So we would go back to the mountains, drive around, thinking if we could find the dirt road, maybe we could remember what happened.
I see.
You know, it wasn't that we totally forgot it.
Right.
And we couldn't find the road. But what we would do is we would stop at restaurants, and we would say to the people who worked there, do you ever see any strange lights in the sky? And we were collecting hundreds of sighting reports. One person would refer us to another, to another, to another. And, you know, so apparently UFOs were frequently seen and quite well known. In fact, sometimes they're even seen coming right down over highways in the middle of the afternoon.
Well, yes, indeed. Pease Air Force was in the general vicinity, and it stated that they had tracked something on their radar.
Yeah.
And,
Because after this, we came home. Well, first I called the police.
okay.
And they told us to report it to Pease Air Force Base. So luckily I did, because then later they released the radar report of this craft being picked up in that area, leaving at 2:14 a.m. And they sent 2 planes out to check it out.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, the abduction scenario itself, ma'am, this was one of the first to be announced. Your story from the other famous contactees from the 40s and 50s.
The contactees.
Yes. This is what the term was, as you well know, back in the 40s and 50s. And let me bring up some names. George Van Tassel and Mr. George Adamski.
Yes. You know, let me say something to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Right this moment, here on TV,
Yes, ma'am.
they're doing a program on contactees.
Oh, is that right?
Right.
And you are in Portsmouth, New Hampshire?
I'm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. But actually, you know, I think people many people knew that UFOs were flying around.
Okay.
But I don't think anybody really realized that there was anybody on board.
Okay. This is the mindset at the time. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Right. Okay. Now let's let's go back and cover. Okay. So you didn't consciously remember, but you knew something had happened.
We knew something had happened.
And Barney was aware of something had happened. And I've watched the movie and read some literature on this case, ma'am. Barney did not want to bring the clothes in the house. Is this correct?
Right. We left our belongings either in the car or on the back steps.
I see.
And we both had the feeling that somehow we'd been exposed to something.
Right.
You know, all we could think of was cosmic rays and things like this.
Uh-huh.
And so actually that's, I did write to an UFO organization at the time asking if anyone came close to a craft, what kind of dangers existed physically for the person.
Would that have been like the Lorenzens group?
Actually, it was NICAP.
It was NICAP, okay.
NICAP at those
Right.
times. Yeah.
And there was APRO, right?
And then APRO later.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But of course, nobody could answer the question
Sure.
because nobody knew.
And there was no, like you said, the thought of thinking that someone were driving these craft or even remotely being on the inside was really unheard of.
Right. And not only that, Barney and I, we'd heard the term flying saucer, and that was it.
Yes.
We had no knowledge at all.
And a flying saucer, the term flying saucer was coined by a gentleman not far from the Portland area, Kenneth Arnold,
Right.
when he had his sighting over Mount Rainier in the Cascade Mountains.
Right. 1947.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it was, right.
Right.
June 1947, several weeks before the Roswell incident.
So could I clarify a point?
Please.
We went to well, first of all, after this experience, Barney's health began to fail
Yes, ma'am.
until he became totally disabled. And so his doctor sent him to a psychiatrist locally to see if he had some kind of emotional problem that was preventing him from recovering. And one day, Barney mentioned to the psychiatrist about our going up in the mountains looking for the dirt road.
Okay.
So this psychiatrist sent both Barney and me to Dr. Benjamin Simon. Now, Dr. Simon's hypnosis is not what is known publicly.
Okay.
His hypnosis, it was medical hypnosis. It's the kind of hypnosis used in surgery.
Okay.
Actually, Dr. Simon was the colonel in charge of Mason General Hospital in New York, which was a treatment center, psychiatric treatment center from men coming back from the war.
Okay.
And he had developed this method of hypnosis so that these men, through his hypnosis and will therapy, would be completely cured in a month to 6 weeks. It was absolutely amazing.
Yes.
In fact, it was so highly successful that the Army itself made a documentary of Dr. Simon's treatment of these men.
Okay.
Yep, and sometimes it's been shown on TV.
All right.
And it's called Let There Be Light.
Okay.
Right. So
Now, go ahead.
So I knew all these things before we went to Dr. Simon. As a social worker, I wanted to make sure that if I was going to a psychiatrist, he was well qualified. So I checked Dr. Simon out before we ever left.
Yes.
And, of course, then we did start going to him every Saturday. Sessions were done separately. And he put the amnesia back on at the end of each session so that when we left there, we had no idea what either one of us had said under hypnosis. So there was
Very
absolutely no way of our discussing this.
Yes. Very interesting.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Hill, can you tell for our audience what it is that you gleaned and the Dr. Simon gleaned from these tapes of your encounters, the description of the craft and the beings?
Okay, now, as far as the description of the craft, later we went back to the capture spot. Actually took measurements to where the craft had been sitting. So we knew it was 60 to 65 feet across. And it was probably 15 to 20 feet tall.
Okay.
Across the front, it had a huge picture window. And it was sitting on the ground, and there was a narrow rim. The doors were shaped like the same kind of doors you would have on a ship. You know, they weren't like a house door. They were like one on a boat.
Okay.
Went in, stepped on the rim, went into a corridor, which ran around the outside edge of the craft.
Were you being led by the beings?
Yes, they had us under tight control.
Uh-huh.
Actually, Barney was very tightly controlled. And he wasn't able to bring himself out of this, but I was.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was taken into the first room. Barney was taken into the second room.
And so you willed off their control over you in a way.
Right. I was able to overcome it.
Well, good for you.
Because at first we were terrified.
Of course.
But then they, for purposes of identification, we called him the leader. And he kept reassuring me that they only wanted to do some simple tests. They were not going to harm us. As soon as the tests were over with, they would take us back to the car and we would come home.
And they assured you of this?
Yeah.
And you called him or this being by name, and the name was?
Oh, I had no name for him. He was just the leader.
Oh, the leader.
The leader.
Okay, so, yeah, okay.
And he spoke English in a very limited way.
Now, was this telepathy contact?
No. Voice.
Voice?
Yeah.
This is rare, isn't it?
I don't know about other people,
well,
but they do talk, you know.
Well,
they are people.
Now,
in fact, they actually have a language of their own.
I see. Now, is this a human being type person, or is this
Yes.
an alien type person?
No, we never called them alien. We always said UFO people.
Right. But
Yeah.
did they have the appearance of human beings, humanoid?
Well, we saw 11, and individual differences in each one.
So you saw the little gray guys with the...
They had a gray tone to the skin.
But how about the large eyes like you see on the cover of Whitley Strieber's books?
No.
Pardon me?
They don't look anything like that.
Okay, the ones that you saw.
They look more like people.
Okay. I think this is enlightening for a lot of people that are watching this program. Miss O, okay, continue.
Now, as far as they were different from us in this way.
Okay.
Their noses were smaller. Their eyes were larger. And they had no hair.
And they had no hair. Okay.
No hair.
Because we have a photograph, ma'am. You were in the a UFO Time Life series known as the UFO Phenomenon. And we have a photograph of you and of Barney. And next to it, on the opposite page, is a very large drawing. I believe it was made by yourself of the alien creature.
Well, it wouldn't be the picture of the bust that I have of Junior.
No. I have that photograph as well, not on this show today, though.
Oh.
And you have a bust of that EBE, correct?
Right.
And you call him Junior?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I started see, they showed me first of all, you know, you heard about little green men. They weren't little green men, so I knew they were not from Mars.
Right.
So I asked them where they were from. And they showed me a star map, which during the hypnosis I sketched. And then research found that this pattern of stars actually does exist. And if our thinking is correct, then
Okay, right there, if we could stop the camera right there. Well, I guess ma'am, we're showing the photograph of the alien does have a nose.
Yeah.
And
And a mouth.
And a mouth, right?
Yeah.
And we have, it looks somewhat humanoid type eyes. It does look somewhat humanoid type face.
Oh, they're a form of people.
I see, but...
Their eyes are larger than ours.
Right.
You know, and they're spaced wider apart.
I can see that, right, and one looks higher than the other. The eyes, one looks higher than the other.
Oh, they shouldn't.
Okay, well, maybe this is Time Life's rendition.
But I haven't seen that picture.
Okay, so you and Barney were led into two different rooms.
Right.
And the examination's begun. Now, this is going on.
Right.
Now, explain what you told to me about just the one particular procedure that they performed on you with the needle.
Right. One of the procedures they performed was trying to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel.
Yes, ma'am.
Which caused pain, so they stopped doing it.
Right.
And then, of course, later, when our experience became known, doctors said it was physically impossible, this could not be done. That was in 65.
Okay.
In 1970, they were doing it.
Yes.
We've been doing it ever since.
For the purpose of extracting ovum, right?
Right.
Okay.
And also they can actually look inside the internal organs, look them over and see what they look like, see if there's any tumors.
I see.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, what other procedures do you recall that you would like to talk about? Can you give a description of the room, tool, or surgical trays, instruments, the type of lighting?
Okay, the room was sort of triangular shape.
Oh.
And it was very, not much furniture. There was a table, an examining table and a stool. And there was some shelves behind some doors.
Uh-huh.
And what they did actually, now, with both Barney and me, this was the same. They were very interested in our hair. They took scrapings of our skin, checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat. They were very interested in our hands and in our feet.
Okay.
Now, with me, they did use some kind of equipment. They said they were checking my nervous system. And then there was a thing about the needle in the navel.
Yes.
Now, with Barney, it was all the same except instead of his nervous system, they were very interested in his bone structure. And they also gave him a rectal exam.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, for the Portland audience, it is our pleasure for the Cosmic Connection to be interviewing an interview with Mrs. Betty Hill. She is the one half of the team of Betty and Barney Hill that were abducted in 1961 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, near Indian Head, New Hampshire. Is that correct, Mrs. Hill?
I'm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We're on the seacoast.
Okay, but didn't the abduction take place?
It was in the White Mountains.
Okay, in the White Mountains.
Yeah.
And, okay, and ladies and gentlemen, we were not taking your calls today. If you would like to contact the Cosmic Connection, we'll put up the appropriate information. All right, Ms. Hill, now, the examination took about how long?
I really don't know, because there was the man that we called the examiner who did the testing.
Yes.
And he did my testing, and then he went into the next room and did Barney's testing. Now, while he's gone, I'm completely relaxed.
Okay.
I'm beginning to really enjoy myself.
No kidding.
I'm walking around, looking at a book, things like this.
You were looking at a book?
Yeah. I was looking for pictures and didn't find any.
Okay.
And it had a very simplified-looking script, you know, and
It had simplified looking what?
Script.
Oh, script,
Yeah,
okay.
Symbols.
Symbols, okay.
Yeah. And of course, while all this was going, there were 9 crew members that stayed out in the corridor.
Okay.
And I'm talking with the leader, and he's asking me questions. He's asking me about age and time and what do we eat and things like this.
Yes.
And then Barney's exam was over with, and they came out leading Barney, and Barney went first, and I started to lead the craft, and the leader said that he would walk part of the way back to the car with me.
Okay.
And you should hear my voice on the hypnosis tape.
I can imagine.
I am saying to him, this is the most wonderful experience of my life.
I bet.
There is nothing you can do to make me forget this. Why don't you come back? Will you please come back? There are many, many people who would like to meet you. And he said, I don't know. It's not my decision to make. And I said, well, if you're going to come back, how will I know where to meet you? And he said, we'll be in touch.
Yes.
And then Barney and I walked back to the car, drove off, got back on the highway. We heard a second series of beeping sounds, and we came home.
What about the star map, the famous star map?
Well, I asked him where he was from, and he showed me the star map.
Was this in another room or in the examination
No,
room?
it was in the examination room.
Okay, so you were led in through the door, taken down the hallway on the outside of the craft, and then only shown into the one examination room.
Yeah, went into the corridor, into the first room. And that's all. I didn't see anything else on the craft.
Now, other abductees I have heard about lighting in the craft, that lighting is just there. There is no really apparatus like a lamp or tubular lighting. Is this correct?
Okay, it was like the walls were opaque, and there was a bluish-white light behind the walls.
Oh.
And the walls and the ceiling. So it was a brilliant blue-white light.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now you're in your car. You've had this experience. You do not remember, you and Barney are just stating that you had, I believe that you saw a sign that you were approaching home, and you thought that was quite odd.
Yeah. So we came home.
And then you noticed that it was, what, 2 hours difference in time?
Right, when we got home, Barney noticed that the trip had taken about 2 hours longer than he had expected.
Yes.
You know. So, but now, this was before the hypnosis.
Yes, of course.
Barney and I had gone up to the mountains looking for the dirt road.
Looking for the dirt road, yes.
And we came home, and on the kitchen table, when we walked in, there was a pile of leaves. And when I went to clean up the pile of leaves, there was the blue earrings I was wearing that night.
No kidding.
Now, this sort of gave me cold shivers.
Sure.
But after the hypnosis, they said, if we're going to come back, we'll let you know.
They let you know.
And so here are my earrings. 1965, Barney and I are leaving my parents' home, who live out in the country.
Yes.
And we saw our second UFO. And from that night on, every time we went out, we saw UFOs. Neighbors saw UFOs flying around our house here in Portsmouth. But they seemed to like my parents' home. Now, as a result of this, and the people who lived in the area, we set up what we called the Silent Network.
The Silent Network?
The Silent Network.
Yes.
Because in about an area about 7 square miles, the UFOs began coming in almost every night in large numbers. We had volunteers who went out almost every night and observed and filmed UFOs.
In 1965.
It started in 65
Okay.
and went on for, we did this up until about 5 years ago.
And
Now, we had all kinds. We had Associated Press. We had United Press International. We had Air Force. We had Navy. We had police. We had fishermen. We had scientists. You name it, we had it. We had big scientific labs coming out with all kinds of equipment to do testing.
On yourself?
No, on the UFOs. I mean, I have pictures of over 200 different kinds of UFOs.
Yes.
Including landed ones. And not just me. A lot of other people, too.
Right, because of
And we had, in this area, we had a central meeting place where we would go and tell each other what had happened. Like sometimes a UFO, we'd go out at night.
Right.
But sometimes the UFOs are flying around in the afternoon.
Wow.
You know?
Yes.
And so I would say probably over the years there were 200 or 300 people involved in this. Week after week after week. We all knew each other. And we called it the Silent Network because we only shared the information with each other.
Okay.
Never any publicity.
Now, let's go back to the blotches on the trunk of the car.
All right.
Where you got your, I believe your sister or a family member told you to get a compass?
A friend of my sister's.
Okay, and let's talk about what the blotches what you thought they were and how they looked and describe them.
Okay, the spots on the trunk of the car, highly polished, and they stayed there for months. Whenever you put a compass near them, the compass just acted erratically. They just spin around and spin around.
Just out of curiosity, ma'am, what kind of a car was it that you owned?
At that time, a 1957 Bel Air
Okay.
Chevrolet.
Yes. All right. For the car buffs out there, that's a very nice car.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Mrs. Hill, now, the tone of abductees during your period wasn't well versed, and then later on, Bud Hopkins wrote a book known as Missing Time. You, I'm sure, have probably met Bud Hopkins.
Oh, I know Bud.
And Dr. John Mack.
Yeah.
These are fine UFO and abduction researchers. Would you agree?
All right. No.
Okay.
No, because no, I said I'm a social worker, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As soon as our experience became known, we were swamped with people
Yes.
all saying, let me tell you about my abduction.
Yes.
So in working with these people, I applied Dr. Simon's formula.
Which is?
When people tell strange tales, they can be lying, hallucinating, having delusions, having dreams, or remembering something that they've seen on TV, heard on radio, or read. So I use this formula in working with people who would say, I think I've been abducted. And through this research, I've been able to separate the real abductions from the fantasies.
It's very hard, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay. Oh, you got me on that one.
No, there are real abductions.
Yes.
But they're all very, very, they're not floating out windows.
Okay, I've heard that one. Yes, ma'am. In New York City.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. But every real abduction, and sometimes these involve 3 people, and most of them involve 2 people. There's once in a while there might be 1 abduction, but that's very rare. And every abduction is totally different. And it seems as though they're doing testing to gain information, knowledge for themselves.
Okay. The aliens are.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So we're just guinea pigs.
The what?
We are guinea pigs to them. They're science experiments. They're coming to this planet to harvest and to learn about what we are or what they possibly have created.
Well, one man, now this is a real abduction, he wasn't even taken on board. They stopped his car, he and his son, and they gave him an injection. And whatever it was, totally changed his whole life. First of all, he had been in a car accident years before, and he had a scar on his face. That disappeared. Also, he had about 20 health changes, all for his benefit.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing.
Yes. So
No, he was about 60 years old. He was beginning to get wrinkles. Now he looks like he was 40.
all right. Let's through Bud Hopkins to today. We have the New Agers.
Right.
And we had the contactees in the early 40s and 50s, and then the abductees in the 60s and 70s around there. And then now we have these New Age, spiritual is a word that's used often, the Unarians Society in San Diego, California. These groups, Mrs. Hill, what is your take on these particular outfits?
Well, it depends on how much money they make.
True.
Actually.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, much of this is it's a business.
Yes, ma'am.
It's commercial. You know, they're out to make money. Where I don't know of any real abductee who has actually made any money at all.
I can think of one.
Now, Barney and me,
No.
I
can think of one person.
Yeah.
That would be Mr. Whitley Strieber.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree?
Yep. But he was a good science fiction writer anyway. Always been a good science fiction writer.
Yes, ma'am.
But like with Barney and me,
Yes, ma'am. Let's continue.
we did not reveal our experience.
For quite a while.
No, it became known.
Oh,
See, we reported this to Pease Air Force Base.
yes.
Okay. An investigative reporter for a Boston newspaper got a hold of the story. It ran for 5 days on the front pages of the Boston newspaper without ever having met us or talked with us.
And I suppose
We had to go to the store and buy the newspaper to see what was being published about it.
Sure. And back then, didn't they publish home addresses?
Oh, yeah.
Did they publish your home address?
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll bet they did.
And
Now-
at the time, John Fuller was here doing investigations of UFO sightings.
Yes.
So John suggested, why don't we get together with Dr. Simon and write a book? And then when people ask you questions, you just tell them, go buy the book.
Sure.
And you can get away from all the publicity.
Absolutely. Why not?
Oh, it didn't work out that way.
No, it didn't.
No.
It wasn't a bestseller?
Oh, yes. In fact, it's just been republished again.
And the name of the book is Interrupted
Well,
Journey.
What they did is they took
Okay.
two of John's books, Incident in Exeter and
Yes.
The Interrupted Journey,
Yes.
and combined them together in one volume.
Wonderful.
And it's selling very well.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing that book. And the name of that book will be?
It's the two titles.
Oh, it's the two titles. Okay.
Right? Incident
Interrupted
in
Journey
Exeter and Interrupted Journey.
and Incident at Exeter.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Are
And
we-
not only that, we just sold the book rights to be published in Germany for the Interrupted Journey.
Yes.
So the interest still goes on.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Now, about your life now, Mrs. Hill. What is it that you're doing now? You are
I'm
sometime.
retired.
Pardon me?
I'm retired.
You are retired, okay? And
I'm retired from social work, and I'm trying to retire from the public.
yes, and I do thank you for consenting to do this interview, ma'am. I find you very enjoyable to speak with, and
Thank you.
how we met is highly unusual, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
That's a side story. Now, let's. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up or to tell our audience that of something that about the Betty and Barney Hill case that may not be known?
Well, what I would like to bring up is that I myself personally have written a book called A Common Sense Approach to UFOs, which is my experiences basically since this happened.
All right.
And it's not just UFOs. I mean, it brings in a lot of research. I mean, such as, well, they're doing this research of the effect of aging on the brain. And I took part in this.
Yes.
It was fascinating. And you know what they found out?
What's that?
The older you are, the smarter you are.
Okay.
The better, your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the better it works.
And this is from the research.
Right. And it's still ongoing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when this information came out, had you told your families about what had happened to you and Barney?
Oh, yes.
Before the announcement, or
before the publicity. Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
had
They
any
were
of you,
involved in this from the very beginning.
okay, wonderful, and they gave you the support that you probably needed.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, there is a story that I have heard. You have heard of the talk show host Art Bell, correct, Mrs. Hill?
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, there is a talk show host by the name of Art Bell, and he recently had a gentleman on recently who was doing investigative work with the Men in Black.
Oh,
Now, during this several-hour program, Barney Hill's name was brought up, and it was, I believe, I could paraphrase this, I believe this is what was said, that Barney Hill was met by some Men in Black individuals, and that the man in black had 2 coins and another object in his hand, and showed them, and they disappeared, and that these individuals were also responsible for Barney Hill having a heart attack and dying.
completely wrong. Barney Hill never met any men in black. However, I know the story of the coins,
Okay?
and I know the man that this happened with. In fact, he and I had several contacts because I'll tell you how I got involved.
Yes, please.
Because this man who came to his house introduced himself as saying, I am one of those people who met with Barney and Betty Hill in the White Mountains. And this man never heard of us. He said, I don't know any Betty and Barney Hill. And then later he talked with a friend of mine who told him about me. So I got in touch, because this man who came said, I'm a friend of Betty Hill. So when I heard about this, I got in touch with him. And I said, I'm Betty Hill. I want to find out about this friend of mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now was this
But Barney did not die of a heart attack.
right, as you stated at the beginning of the show, that
He had a stroke.
he had a stroke.
Right. And there were no men in black involved in it.
Okay, well, good. Then we've set the record straight on that one.
Right.
The car that you had with the blotches on it, did those blotches remain?
After a while, during the winter, the shininess wore away.
And there were investigators, I'm sure, that came and looked at it, or
Nope, not
no,
one
you
of
didn't
them.
tell anybody. That's right.
They came, and they would ask, a couple of investigators, they asked questions and all. But the only ones who really saw the spots in the trunk of the car were my family and my neighbors.
Were photographs taken?
Nope. Not only that, the night all this happened, we had a camera right on the front seat.
Sure.
Never thought to use it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The common sense approach to UFOs. This book that you've written came out about a year and a half ago, and you said that this book can be located at a person's favorite bookstore through the computer. Am I correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, the reason we do not have the book on our desk today is because of some mailing, and we will have Betty Hill's book on our next program. Also, now, Ms. Hill, I was made aware of an Antonio Villas Boas, a South American farmer who claimed to have been abducted in the early 60s also, and who had a rendezvous, if you will, with a beautiful humanoid-looking individual in the hills of South America, where he was forced to mate, if you will, with this individual. You know of this story?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, and you brought up a good point there.
Please.
After this man was a farmer, after this happened, I understand he went back to school and became a well-known lawyer. And this seems to be a pattern with people who have had real abductions. Their lives change, and big improvement. You know, they really become very successful afterwards.
Okay.
And most people don't even know they've been abducted.
Right.
Yep.
True. There was no physical evidence that you had to show anyone. Did you have, or maybe I don't know this? Did you have marks or triangular dots on your body like what's reported today, or scars or scoop marks?
No.
Very
we
unusual.
just had the feeling of being contaminated, and we took long showers.
Okay. Okay. To wash it off, whatever it was.
Right.
Mrs. Hill, what is your opinion of ufology and what is going on today? Let's deal with just the abduction points. We have Dr. John Mack from Harvard. We have Bud Hopkins. We have Mr. Whitley Strieber. These individuals. There's even a Dr. Stephen Greer,
Yes.
who is helping to run the SETI Foundation or the SETI investigation. Ma'am, I was distressed to read on the internet just the other day that Mr. Greer is suffering from cancer, and his assistant is suffering from a similar case of cancer, and they are finding this rather unusual, since two people would be stricken with the same type of cancer. This sounds something like a CIA type plot where maybe they were administered this without their knowledge.
Well, a friend of mine who's a friend of Stephen Greer told me that he has skin cancer.
Yes.
And it has metastasized. No, I don't know about his assistant.
Okay. But some...
And not only that, another little interesting side bit.
Yes.
My doctor went to medical school with Stephen Greer.
All right. Very
Only
interesting.
he's in New Hampshire.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, now.
Okay, now, Mrs. Hill, let's go to the star map. This is very interesting. You were shown a star map, and a lady came and really worked hard with you in trying to discover what the star map and its indications were, where it possibly could be found. We did not have the technology back then to really locate the star system. Am I correct?
All right, let me explain my star map.
Yes, please.
The basic research was done by Marjorie Fish,
Yes.
who works at Oak Ridge, you know, in the nuclear research.
Yes, a very, very... Go ahead, yes.
And she became interested. She stayed with me for several days, and then she went back home and she started building models and putting beads on strings.
Yes.
and she started out putting us in the middle
Okay.
and working so many light years out.
Right.
And then she started removing those beads that could not possibly have planets in our thinking. And when she ended up, she had my star map. But she wasn't able to complete it because I had 2 stars on the map that we did not know existed then. Later, I think it was about 69 to 70, we found those 2 stars. Not only that, I understand my star map has been used to correct our thinking about the distance between the different star systems.
How's that?
Now, another thing,
Okay.
on the map, there were solid lines and broken lines.
Yes.
Now, the solid lines are where they go all the time or frequently.
Okay.
The broken lines were expeditions. Now, the broken lines go to new star systems. The solid lines go to star systems 4.5 billion years old or older, and that's us.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like they're going out and really looking around at all the star systems within their general neighborhood. And then where they find something interesting, they keep going back.
Sure. And
And the broken lines are, places that are just developing.
right, and they really like coming to Sol 3, don't they?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add to tell the Portland audience? You have retired, and you have this book, A Common Sense Approach to UFOs.
Right.
How?
And to me, there's 2 UFO fields.
Okay.
One is the commercial field.
Yes.
The other one is the American public themselves. The people of this country know more about UFOs than all the organizations do. It's amazing the amount of knowledge they have.
It's amazing on how much disinformation is put out there, or who's trying to approach one other or get the best. I call it the biggest slice of pie, whoever has the largest slice of pie in ufology. This backbiting and
Right.
discrediting of one's credentials back and forth. I see this a lot.
Right.
Ma'am, give me your take on Philip Klass. I really enjoy this man. He is a smart individual, but he really does go out on the lunatic fringe of saying that UFOs just flat out do not exist.
Well, what Phil Klass needs, now, I've done several programs with Phil Klass,
Let's hear it, ma'am.
and what Phil Klass needs to learn is how to do an investigation. He has no idea how to do an investigation.
Okay.
Now, I'm a child welfare worker. I am like when we received a complaint of neglect or abuse or pre-delinquency, these things, it was my responsibility to go out and do an in-depth investigation. So I'm a trained investigator.
Yes.
Phil Klass needs a little of this training.
Okay. Well, Miss Hill, I must
You
say...
know what I tell Phil?
What? What do you tell him?
I hope he gets abducted by all beautiful nude women.
You tell him that.
Yeah.
You tell him that, don't you?
Yep.
Wonderful. Ma'am, how do you feel about the Roswell situation now that we're entering or have just left the 50th anniversary? We had Kevin Randall on our last program, and the Roswell town was besieged.
Yeah, I know. Well, first of all, one thing that has to be explained to me,
Yes.
and because I'm well acquainted with the Air Force,
Yes, ma'am, you are.
the public information officer came out and said we have recovered a crash disk. Now, he didn't come out all by himself. He had to have approval from the top people at the base.
Yes.
in order to make this announcement.
Right.
Okay. And then Washington comes in and says, oh, it's a balloon.
Yes.
So, I believe it was a crash disc. I don't know if they recovered bodies,
Yeah.
but I think they recovered a UFO.
Well, Mrs. Hill, this has been a very fast hour. I want to thank you very much for your kindness and that I am allowed to call you my friend. You are just a lovely lady, ma'am.
Thank you, Cosmos.
And we will keep in touch with you, ma'am. Best of health to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a common sense approach to UFOs. It can be located by computer through your favorite bookstore. Mrs. Hill, thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Good evening.
Good evening, you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it. An interview with Mrs. Hill. We will be taking your phone calls after the program at 667-7434. Don't forget to go to our website. Don't forget to email myself or Dennis. Go to the Aliens Over Oregon website that you'll see a very fascinating information there. I'd like to thank Billy Goodman once again. Also, would like to thank La Costita Mexican restaurant. Roberto Aguilera out there at the La Costita Mexican restaurant. And their address is 14626 6 Southeast Sunnyside Road. They're the ones that supplied us with the outstanding Mexican cuisine and the wonderful platters today for the Cosmic Connection crew and staff of the MCTV underground base facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, until 2 weeks, I'm Cosmo. Good evening.
Traffic on the freeway of life. Some people give, some people try. Some people say they do, but they're just telling lies. Just a drifter, drifting day to day. Going down another winding road. Never knew I could be so far from home. Today's gone, tomorrow here's my cry. Here I stand still asking why.